All right, now for something completely different. I'm here to give a talk about an EPO program that I've been involved with for the past couple of years. So I know this is something a little different, certainly not talking about laser ranging, but I think it's something that's actually really important, not just for something that I do, but for the community as a whole. There's many ways to say this, but let's just say that because planetary science really took off in the 1960s with obviously the wonderful Apollo program, there is a need now to essentially, how to say this without offending anyone in particular, to maintain the community, to maintain the community's vibrancy and to ensure that not only immediately but going down and forward, we have a community that's capable of addressing needs that NASA puts forward. So that's why myself and several colleagues, including my co-author on this talk, Laura Bleacher, who also incidentally has really been one of the great proponents of the work that we're doing and has been very helpful, developed this group, the Next Generation Lunar Scientists and Engineers. And so I'm going to talk about some of the work that we've done recently, and by recently I mean Monday, and some of the things that we'll be doing going forward. Okay, so just a little bit of background. This group, we began as purely a grassroots effort in 2008. Really, this is just the brainchild of a few other like-minded early career people thinking, you know, here we are, we're early in our careers, NASA is going to be going to the moon soon, and we need to make sure that there's some way that early and young, enthusiastic people can find out who each other are. We're going to be working together for the rest of our lives. We better start getting along and figuring out what we're going to be doing together, but also to provide some support, provide some means of communication, and also provide some professional development. So starting with no money and essentially just some ideas, we began organizing meetings around LPSC, around the Lunar Science Forum, and our membership has grown quite substantially in the last few years. We have about 190 people who identify themselves as being members of the next generation of lunar scientists and engineers. And I would put out, you know, it doesn't just mean that you were born in the last 25 years. Anybody can be a member. It's really, we're sort of not going to turn anyone away from our doors. What we're looking for are people who are enthusiastic about developing a community. Developing a community, we're going to be working together for a long time. What we do is we provide these professional development opportunities. We provide networking and opportunities for members to interact with senior members of the community, essentially learn from them, learn not necessarily what science is going on, but what are some of the best practices for becoming better scientists, being better community members. So that's a really important part that I really have to highlight, is that we're dedicated to helping people be successful professionally and scientifically. This is not just a bunch of people getting around and socializing. There's some real strives to improve the community and improve what we're going to be doing over the next several decades. So just to remind, our goals is to help people get ready to contribute to the lunar program, whatever flavor the lunar program is in, and essentially help develop a workforce that's going to be competent and capable going forward. And one of the things that we really strive to do is bring scientists and engineers together. We're going to be working together for a long time, getting samples back from the moon, eventually sending humans to the moon. We better learn how to communicate and work well with each other now so that we don't have to struggle with that down the line. Get this out of the way now. Okay, so what we've done is held a series of community building events, essentially across a wide range of what you might call forms of getting gatherings, whether it's as informal as just breakfast meetings at AGU where we brought in Yvonne Pendleton to talk to us, holding happy hours. That seems to be one of the most popular things that we do. Not a difficult thing to encourage people to get together and enjoy some social opportunities. But also, and really importantly, are the more structured formal meetings that we have had either at LPSC in the past few years or here at the NLSI. I'm going to talk about some of the work that we've done with the NLSI for the majority of my presentation, but I really do want to stress how great the NLSI has been at supporting what we are doing, as well as the LPI. In the past, we've held a series of workshops. These workshops have been enabled by funding through the EPO ESS program, the Education Public Outreach for Earth and Space Sciences, to hold workshops in conjunction with NLSI and LPSC. And what those are really geared towards doing is helping people communicate their science, what they do. Whether it's getting up in front of a room of colleagues and presenting your science, getting up in front of a room of third graders, or getting in front of a camera or a reporter and talking about what your science is doing. In 2009, we had a very informal, small meeting here talking about how to communicate effectively with your scientific peers and colleagues. And fortunately, we were able to encourage a group of grad students led by Addie Dove and Andrew Poppy and a few other folks who have now taken up the call and hold an annual Lunar or Loon GradCon on the Sunday before NLSI, and that's been very successful. And I know there's a number of people who've participated, and I see a lot of heads nodding that it's a very successful forum. Last year we had an event here in this room prior to NLSI where we were brought in a series of teachers, of educators, who helped prepare us to go into classrooms. I think one of the most important things that we as early career scientists, really of anybody in the field, can do is get out and encourage students to study geology, astronomy, science, any kind of science, and particularly, of course, study the planets. How do you best do that? How do you go out and give an effective presentation to third graders? Getting up and giving your LPSC talk or your NLSI talk to a bunch of third graders, that's not going to work. However, getting up and engaging them and really getting them to be enthusiastic will be obviously something that's going to be very rewarding for them and for you. And this year, we held workshops, the workshop on Monday, talking about media training. What do you do? How do you best prepare for talking to the media? Whether it's standing up in front of a camera to talk to, your local weather reporter or talking to the New York Times on the phone. How do you actually do that and not either confuse someone, give bad information, and how do you give your message across, which is something obviously I'm struggling with right now. And why did we choose these topics? And this is really another important part. It's not that Laura and I get together and say, well, what are we doing this year? It's based on feedback from the community, feedback from the members who are saying, these are things that we want to do. This is something that we think would be valuable. And so we go out and we bring these speakers in to help prepare us. And so we also hold, in all of our events, we like to bring in established members of the community to give their lessons learned. What's it been like working for NASA for 40 years? What's it like being involved in missions? Essentially to give us some sort of inspiration and hope that things will work out and be okay. And another important part is just getting together, self-identifying, knowing our colleagues, and learning how to work together effectively. This is a plot showing the results of an assessment we sent out in January that asked our members to tell us what they wanted to do. And so the orange colors represent things that people are very interested in learning about. And so, interestingly enough, the response that had the most interest was getting hired by the federal government. And despite what I've tried to tell everyone, well, anyway, no. But you'll also notice that the one with the most interested, the blue response, was tips for speaking to the media, how to prepare, and so on. And so that's what gave us the idea to hold the workshop on Monday that we did. Just a few other possible results: speaking to the public, how to get involved and get funded to do your research, and so on and so forth. And these are going to be themes that are going to crop up again and again in my presentation here, is that there are several things that the community, and by the community I mean our next gen group, is identified as being really, really important that we want to prepare for going forward. Okay, so what did we do on Monday? Well, we brought in a group called Experience Media that has worked closely with several NASA centers. They've come out to Goddard a few times. They've worked with several missions and essentially have held media training. How do you talk to the media? How do you convince your reporter that's interviewing you that what you're talking about is important and valid? And how do you get your message across? And so they came in for a one-day workshop where they would, in the photo here, Katie O'Sullivan, interviewed on camera, which was both wonderful and nightmarish for her, and she's going to hate me that I put this picture up. But it's as best as we can in the environment we were working in, recreate what it's like to sit in front of a camera with someone who's going to ask you hostile questions, who's going to ask you leading questions, who's going to try to get you to say something that's going to make you sound stupid. Kind of like getting up and talking in front of some colleagues. Not nobody here, of course. But an important part that we try to convey to all the participants is that you may never sit in front of a camera and be interviewed, but you are going to get up in front of a room and talk to your colleagues or peers or any number of people. And so the tips that and the lessons learned from this workshop are applicable to any form of communication. So the big points were that we were sort of trained on was how to craft agenda points. What are your 5 fundamental things that you want people to walk away with? Oh yeah, I understood that and I've learned something new today. How do you handle that question that you're terrified of? Well, clearly the Apollo moon landings are fake. How do you, how do you defend all the money that you're spending? How do you actually respond to something like that? And then, of course, holding mock interviews on camera where we were presented with those sorts of nightmare scenarios. And so, again, stressing that it's applicable to any situation. We brought in members of the community. David Morrison and Tony Colapree in this image came and talked about some of the experiences they've had in interacting with the media. If anybody knows Tony, he's had some incredible experiences with the L-Cross mission and having to defend that nightmare question of, well, what do you mean you're bombing the moon? And so getting his reaction and how he handled that was really very, very interesting for all of us. And again, we really appreciated their effort. At the end of the workshop, we had a summary evaluation. Everybody who participated agreed that what we strive to get across work, that the participants were able to learn how to get useful communication skills, how to communicate with the media. They enjoyed the opportunity to talk with each other and continue collaborations, and that they're well prepared to actually go out and practice this in reality. And of course, everybody, oddly enough, wanted more times or opportunities to get on camera, which was a surprise and both disappointing that we weren't able to do that, but maybe something that will happen in the future. One of the most valuable aspects is just how to articulate your science to anyone, and how to learn and how to get out and convince people that what you're doing is actually very valid. And so again, a couple examples of things that we were doing on Monday. Okay, so the first and final sort of conclusion is that there's this body of people that are very excited and looking forward to a fruitful career, and we want to get out and share our excitement, not just for the science, but for the sense of exploration that we have to the world, essentially. We're ready to participate and we're ready to lead in the future, and we really, again, want to make sure that the lunar community is successful going forward. And I include some final conclusions, again, based on the survey we held, and I would never tell anyone how to advise their students, but this is based on feedback from students, grad students, and early career folks, that they like these opportunities to meet other members of the community and to get involved as best they can without hindering their career. Learning to write proposals has been the one thing, how to write good proposals, has been the one thing that everyone has come to us time and time again wanting to know more about. And so we'll have to investigate that in the future. Everybody wants career advice. And as you can see, many people wanting to work for the government, maybe we need to do better about giving them good advice. No, I kid, of course. Everybody in this room here at NLSI can help by interacting with not just myself, but any member of the next generation and being encouraging. We have one more year of funding from our EPOS grant. As I said, the NLSI has been very supportive, but we are really looking for new opportunities to continue funding these types of workshops and for future partnerships as well. Additionally, although I'm not as young as I once was, I'm not getting any younger, and so there'll be a point where I can't be leading the charge of this group, and so we're also looking for interested young people to take the leadership roles over the next couple of years and really lead the charge into the future. All right, so with that, I'll conclude and take some questions. Thank you.
Other questions for Noah? Just shout them out.
Yeah, so first of all, I should say I'm a baby boomer, but this is one of the best young professional activities I've heard of. I'm also a little bit surprised by all these people wanting to join the federal government somehow. And okay, so if it's a pure scientific crowd, maybe I sort of understand that. I was wondering how much of an entrepreneurial crowd there is in there as well.
Yeah, most of our membership is made up of, again, mostly scientists and a handful of engineers, and we've really made efforts to identify engineers who'd want to come and join. It's just getting them to scientific meetings is sometimes challenging. We have had in the past several people who were working in industry or in sort of private business But there's just not a big population of people to draw off of, and certainly we'd like to, be as broad a based a group as possible, and so bringing anybody in who's interested in the future of lunar science and exploration would be more than welcome to join. But just reaching out to them and identifying them is probably the biggest challenge. I don't have the numbers, but I'd say probably 70% of the group is scientific, which is fine by my taste. And there's nothing wrong with working for the federal government, incidentally.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a two-part question.
Okay.
I'm curious as to how much funding you had under EPOS, number one, and number two, how much you're looking for.
Funding under EPOS. I can't give you, I don't remember the bottom line dollar amount. We put in money for time for both Laura and I to cover salary, probably about 2.5 weeks per year. And then we importantly asked for travel money. One of the things about bringing students to this workshop is that we didn't want to put the onus on the advisor to have to pay for an extra day to come to NLSI or to come to LPSC. So we asked for money so that we could bring people out a day early, pay for an extra night hotel, pay for a rental car, food, things like that, and for supplies and for money to bring in guest speakers as well. And I forget your second question.
Do you have a ballpark of how much you need to continue?
Anything really. I mean, probably the biggest thing is this travel money. That's a big lure to get people to come. We're looking for about $250 or so per person ballpark. So $2,000 plus money, in the low K figure. But we're willing to work with whatever we have. We've been thrifty in the past, and we'll certainly do so in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you liked Noah, you can see him again at 4:45.
That's right. I'll recreate myself